Hello YouTube. Today we're going to look at optimizing our P6 project. We're going to look at the schedule first, then the resources, then the budget, and when they're good, we'll baseline the project. Here's our three areas, joined by double-headed arrows, meaning a change in any one of them will impact the other two. So here we are back in the car project, ready to do the three phases of optimization. So we'll start with the timeline of the schedule. And you remember that our project started in July 14, and at the moment it's finishing in April 15. You might remember that when we scoped out the project, we said that we had 6 months from July 14 to do the job. Now if we go back into the projects tab and look at car, make sure it's highlighted here, and then go down to the dates tab below, and you'll see that there is the project level constraint down here, must finish by 23rd of January 15. But our scheduled finish is the 24th of April 15. So we've gone some way beyond our must finish by date. So we've got to shorten the project so that it does in fact finish by the 23rd of January 15. So back to the activities window. And we have to compress the project somehow. There are several ways of doing that. We could look at increasing the number of resources on the job. We could look at making the resources work harder. So if they're working currently an 8-hour day, which they are, we could make them work 10 hours a day or 12 hours a day. If they're working 5 days a week, we could make them work 6 or 7 days a week. So there are those options to consider. What we also might do is look at the way the activities are organized at the moment. And they are all in a finish to start relationship, each activity with its successor. So there may be some scope for doing certain activities at the same time rather than have them all in a sequence. And so that's what we'll consider in the first instance. So it has to be logical, and it has to be realistic, the solution that we come up with. So we're building a new car in these various phases: design, build, test, sell. So what could we reasonably do at the same time? You can't really build a car until you've designed it. You can't really test the car until you've got something built in order to test. But selling, do we have to wait until all of the cars are built before we start selling them? Or could we reasonably sell them earlier? So that's the most obvious thing that we can do here, is to begin selling at an earlier stage in the project. We need to be able to show people what they're putting their money into. So we'd need to have the design finalized and maybe have a prototype car built. So the scope for bringing the selling stage of the project back to somewhere in the build stage. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make the first activity in build, 1040, and the first activity in selling, 1080, happen at the same time. So now I have to reorganize the plan in order to make that happen. So essentially I have to change the relationships or the logic. So I highlight 1040, build. I come down to the relationships tab. At the moment 1040 goes to 1050, which is logical. But I want 1080, first activity of selling, to happen at the same time as 1040. So what I do is I make a new successor to 1040. So I assign a new successor and make that 1080. So I come down, I find 1080 and assign it, close the box. By default, it goes in as a finish to start, but that's not quite what I want. I want them both to start at the same time. So I make the relationship start to start. And you can see in the Gantt chart, the line goes in. So that confirms that what we want to happen is happening. So if I reschedule now, I expect this activity 1080 to come back to be starting at the same time as 1040, which will be sometime in September. However, if I scheduled that now, I would find that nothing changes. So what's the problem? The problem is the existing logic between 1070 and 1080. So there is an existing finish to start relationship here that is holding out 1080 and preventing it coming back. So essentially I have to get rid of that relationship. So what I can do is I can bring my cursor in the Gantt chart to just touch the relationship line I'm interested in. I then see a symbol, a vertical white arrow. When I see that symbol, I double left click, and that will bring up a dialog box, an edit relationship dialog box, where I can do all sorts of good things. I can change the relationship type. I can introduce some lag, which is a delay, or I can delete the relationship. And that's what I'm going to do in the first instance. I'm going to delete that relationship. Are you sure? Yep. And you can see that that line has now disappeared. So with that no longer holding 1080 out, if I now reschedule, I find that 1080 comes back and starts at the same time as 1040, which is what I wanted. Now we've still got a little bit of a problem here in that the finish activity was linked to 1090, so that's come back as well. And it's no longer in the correct position because it should be after 1070 now. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to make a relationship between 1070 and the finish milestone. To do that, I can do it quickly in the Gantt chart by holding the cursor just to the right of 1070 till I see the lightning bolt symbol. I then hold the left mouse button down, drag it to the start milestone symbol till I see the blue line come in place. I then release the left mouse button, and I see that that relationship line is now in place. 1070 is now showing 1100 as its successor in a finish-to-finish relationship, which is correct. Finish milestone should be linked finish-to-finish to other activities. If I now reschedule, I will see the finish milestone reposition, and it pushes out to the correct place. So now I'm finishing 13th of February, which is still a bit late. We were targeting January. And you can see in your total float column that it's still showing negative float, come down to minus 16 now. So we've still got a slight problem that we need to address. And I'm going to address that by reconsidering the estimates I've been given. The estimates were 25 days for each activity. I'm going to reconsider those now, and I decide that those were overly generous and that I can trim those a little bit. So I'm actually going to make each of the activities, instead of 25, I'm going to make them 20 days. So I change that one there to 20. And I want all of these others that are currently showing 25, apart from the selling ones. These others I want to be 20 as well. So to speed it all up, I can do what's called a fill down. So I highlight from 1020 down to 1070 by holding the shift button down on my keyboard, clicking on the 1070. So I've now blocked that little lot. I then have to make sure that my cursor remains within the duration column. The 20 is the very first duration I see there, but the others are 25 days, apart from the summary ones, which won't count. I then remain with my cursor in the duration column and right-click. Get the drop-down menu. You see that fill down is one of the options in there. So I click on that, and now those activities have changed from 25 days to 20 days. Ding, 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 ding. And if I reschedule now, I'm still showing -16. That won't change until we reschedule. I reschedule, and I now see +14. So I'm now finishing 14 days early, which is okay. Notice that everything's gone green in the Gantt chart. So I no longer can see a critical path. Now that can be fixed by going back to the schedule icon, bringing up the schedule dialog box, going to the options button in there, and in the general tab of schedule options, I come down to the definition of critical activities. I don't want it to be total float, less than or equal to. I want it to be longest path. I change that, close the box, reschedule, and now I see the critical path. So now my schedule is finishing in time. I'm now finishing on the 2nd of January 15, which is 14 days early. So I've got a bit of float up my sleeve. So certain things could be delayed without jeopardizing the ultimate must finish by date of the schedule. So we've optimized the schedule, the timeline of our project. That's the first of the three things we have to optimize. The second thing we're going to look at optimizing are the resources. So here we've got Jeff Young on all of the activities. And when we analyze our resources by going to the resource usage profile icon on the top there and bringing that up, we see that there's a lot of red in here because Jeff is doing everything basically. He's doing the level of effort job, which happens every day of the project, and then he's doing all this work and the overlap work as well, which is causing this spike in the middle. So in the first instance, what I'll do is I will remove Jeff from the level of effort, the project administration job. So I highlight that particular activity. I come over to my resource icon on the right. There's Jeff Young. I go to the remove icon, the one with the red cross. Click on that. Are you sure? Yes. Click yes again. Close the dialog. And Jeff's been removed, and the scale of the problem has been reduced. I still have an excess in this overlap position here because he's working on 1040 and 1080 at the same time, and 1050 and 1090 at the same time. So once again, I don't have the option of delaying these because that will push me back over my must finish by date. So essentially I've got to find somebody else to do the work down here. So that I will do. I will take Jeff off those two. So I highlight those two, come over to my resource tab over here. This time I'm going to hit the icon with the green and white squares, which is the replace icon. It means I want to replace Jeff Young. I want to take him off the job and put somebody else on. So I click on that. Another dialog box pops up, meaning who do you want to replace him with? So I have a look. Who have I got? Remember, we're using the engineers. So we'll try Tim Hood. So I choose Tim, green cross Tim. Get a little warning saying, hey, their rates are different. Tim's in there, and the problem has reduced somewhat. I'm going to put a different resource on the project admin level of effort. So once again, I come over here, and find another body, and I'll put Bill Sanders on that one. And there, we're in the green. So the resources have been optimized and the timeline has been optimized. So we've optimized 2 of our 3. The final thing to optimize is the budget. Now, if you remember, when we defined the scope of the project, we said that the car budget, which we recorded in the budget log, was going to be 50 million. And if we look in the activities at the budgeted total cost column, where all of the resource costs and this cost here, the 49 million, is in fact produced by a purchase of components that's been recorded as an expense. So I'm in the expense tab. There's the components gone in at 49.5 million. So they've also been added to the project budget. And when all of the resource costs and the component costs are added up, we come to 49,593,000 and a bit. So we're still within our budget of 50 million. So at the moment, we don't need to do anything else as far as the budget is concerned. So our 3 elements that needed to be optimized have been optimized. So we're now in a position where we can take a copy of this schedule that will be preserved forward into the future. And we call this baselining. So I'm now ready to baseline the project. Baselining is a 3-stage process. The first thing we have to do is create the baseline. Once it's created, we assign it to the project. Once it's assigned, we make it visible in the Gantt chart. So first thing is to create it. So we go to the project drop-down, find the maintain baselines option, click on that. There's our project, new car. We add a baseline and we save a copy of the current project in its current state. We say OK. And the program will create a baseline and place it underneath new car. And there it is, new car B1, baseline 1. So we have a baseline for the project. We can give it a type down here through the drop down, call it the initial plan. We can now close this box and assign the baseline to the project, the second phase of the 3-stage process. Project, assign baseline. The assign baseline dialog box comes up. You identify the project. Remember, we could have more than one project open at the same time, so we need to identify the project. Here we've only got one project open, so it's a no-brainer. And we make the project baseline, get the drop-down, there's B1. It's also possible to put in user baselines. The project baseline is reserved for the project manager because this is the one that is used for all calculations and performance measurement in the project. We can also make a user baseline, a user primary. And there are 2 others, a secondary, user secondary, or user tertiary. But we don't need to bother with those at the moment. We could have used either or. And now we go on to the 3rd phase. We say OK to that. And now we have to make it visible in the Gantt chart. So we come into the Gantt chart with our cursor, we right click, we go for the bars option. Brings up the big bars dialog box. And then we look for our baseline options down here. And there is the primary user baseline. The project baseline wasn't part of the list, so if we wanted that one, we'd have to add it. I'll do that in a later video. So I tick on the primary baseline. You can see it's going to be a skinny yellow bar positioned on row 2. There are 3 positions per row. The activity bars will be positioned on row 1, and then we have 2 other positions that we can make use of. So we're putting our baseline on row 2. If I apply that, you'll see the line appear just underneath the activity bars. So that's our baseline, showing us where all the bars were at the time the baseline was created. So I say OK to that. As we move forward in time and certain activities may be delayed, then you will start to see the bars slipping away from the baseline. The baselines remain where they were originally created, and any movement, any changes to the start dates or finish dates of individual activities will be quite obvious in the Gantt chart. And as we go forward in time and changes occur to our project, we will take new baselines when approved changes are made to our project. Then that is a point at which we would take a new baseline, and you end up with several baselines during the course of a project. So that's the optimization of the project and the creation of the baseline. Hope you enjoyed the video. There will be more to come in the future. So thanks for watching.